Welcome to Fly on the Wall podcast. I'm your host, Chris Sonksen, and I'm also the CEO and founder of Church Boom. Today, you get to be a part of a live coaching session with a pastor who's facing the same type of struggles and concerns that you're facing. If you enjoy today's podcast, make sure to give us a like, a share, or a subscribe. Today, I'm so excited to have Tom Groot on the call, and it was an amazing discussion with Tom about multi-site and multi-services, when to launch them, when not to, what boundaries we need to follow, what criteria we need to follow to make sure that whether it's a multi-service or a multi-site, that we make sure that we are setting it up for the best success possible. So let's jump into the conversation. Good to see you. Well, man, how can I help you today? What's on your mind? Let's talk.
Well, man, I appreciate it. Appreciate you taking a few minutes and just to afford the leaders like me, man. I tell you, we're in a really cool spot where we're really wrestling with and praying about a handful of things. And we, like a lot of churches across the nation, we're really just blessed right now. And seeing some growth, seeing some cool things happening. And one thing we just keep talking about and wrestling with is this question here. And I was wondering for you, like, how do you determine, when do you add services or when do you plant a new site? Right. At some point, do you say, "Oh man, we've got people in this area. We're gonna put a site in this area," or with that tension there? How do you kind of wrestle through that one? That's one that we've talked about a little bit, having a hard time trying to figure out.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. No, that I love it. I love the question. So let's talk about the service. There are when we're talking about adding services, I have a few thoughts for you. Typically, I encourage people, my experience and what I've seen work is you look at three different areas. You look at your main auditorium, your children's department, and your parking. What's happening there? Are they reaching that 80%? Is it feeling forced? Is it feeling like, man, if we don't do something, we're gonna hit a ceiling and come back? So what's interesting sometimes is it might be happening in the children's before it happens in the parking, or it might be happening in the parking before it happens, in the main auditorium. And so that's one thing. Second thing is, so you got to look at that and make sure that at least one of those is creating a problem. Because if there's not tension, then there's no reason for it. I shouldn't say no reason, because you can think of a reason, but
you
the reason
one up, right?
Yeah, make one up. The reason should come from tension, because when you're going to add another service, it's important that the people in the congregation, that they feel the weight of the problem. People don't want to buy into a solution until they feel the weight of the problem. So the problem's got to be like, hey guys, this is what's happening in our children's ministry, or this is what's happening on Sunday morning in our auditorium. Here's what's happening with our parking lot. You guys have seen it. We got to fix this problem. Second thing is, while you're thinking about those extra services, where I think sometimes people jump the gun is they're not ready for it. They just assume the children's person knows how to orchestrate, getting more volunteers and how to put that in planning center, how to put that in somewhere where they're figuring out, okay, I got to have, how many more leaders do I have? How many more volunteers? Can the worship team handle it? Can the first impressions, greeters, ushers, hospitality, can they handle it? I've seen people launch and not consider the leadership and the volunteers that are necessary. So that's an important part as well. You got to think about all that. Multi-site. Let's talk about that for a moment. Are you at one site right now, or at two?
We
or three?
are. We're at one site. We're heavily considering throwing another one down. So that's kind of where we're at.
Talk about why you're considering it. What's the reason for considering it?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons for us. For us, we want to have a vision of a spirit-powered church in every school district. So in our area, a lot of small school districts all around here, and there's something about small town USA and their love of their school and their pride there. So we've got this vision of putting sites within school districts to really contextualize the ministry to a small community. And so that's flowing out of that, what we've been doing about is praying for opportunities, influence, and also leaders. So we're not looking to plan a site without leadership and being ready to go. And so we've had some people that have rose up through the church that have been pastors in the past and kind of just sitting here and ready. They're starting to get that itch again. Yeah. And so we sat down and talked to them and said, okay, how do you want to do this? Do you want to just launch you? Like, you want to go play, you want to go do something? And everyone keeps coming to us and saying, no, we want to be a part of the faith DNA. We want to be a part of what you're doing here. And so that's kind of where we're heading. We're heading in that direction. So that's the kind of the why behind the what. We've got some leadership. We've got some opportunity. right? And there's some doors that are opening. And so it's, man, I just want to make sure that, yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of where we're at, right?
Well, man, I got plenty to say about multi-site. Because I think I'm the founding pastor of South Hills, and we have 12 campuses. And if anybody's done it wrong 20 times over, that would be me. And so learn from my crazy mistakes. Several things quickly. I'll just fire at you. Well, let me ask you this: how far is downtown for you? That second campus you're talking about.
Downtown campus for us, excuse me, would be about, it's about a 10-minute drive, not even.
10-minute drive.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel like this? It feels separated enough? You said small town USA, so think about if you're Disneyland, are people going to stop at the little putt-putt golf course and attend church there, or are they just going to go 10 more minutes and go to Disneyland?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a part of it for us is to create enough autonomy to contextualize to that area, right? So to really build a church that fits that, even though it's not that far away, there is some differences in all these areas. I could name these small towns, and when you name them, there's nuances, right? And it's just a little bit different. This town is different than this town. We may only be 10 miles apart, but there's just some differences. So it's kind of taking the DNA, the safe place to find and follow Jesus, and implanting it and really trying to contextualize that. So that's where we're wrestling with. Can we take some leaders that fit an area, put them in there, and allow them to grow with the DNA that we have?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think there's some wisdom there because, like you said, people are going to go right past the putt golf course and go right to Disneyland, and you got to think about, okay, so how are we going to make that unique? How's it going to stand? I think the challenge, Tom, also is think, how is it unique but yet aligned? And because what you don't want is that church becoming, well, let me rephrase that. If your desire is that you're a multi-site, desire is that you're one church, desire is that you're one body, desire is that they feel more like you per se, where you're going to have to find that balance between autonomy and alignment.
Right.
And have you thought about that?
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations. You're right where we're at. That's where we're sitting right here is that conversation. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And so we could spend this whole 45. What do we got? An hour and a half for this one, right? We could spend some time on this conversation because that's right where we're at. Is really trying to wrestle with that point because I've talked to a lot of friends and seen a lot of people, and that's really the tension. Here's what we're going to copy and paste, and here's what we're going to give you freedom on, and where does that line exist? And man, that's where I'm most fearful, to be honest with you, because it seems like that's the make or break point moving forward. I think everything else, there's a lot of things like, man, this makes sense. Let's just go. Like, let's do this. Yeah. But then I'm like, man, I don't want to do something that 6 months from now we're already wrestling. Like, so we are talking through all those things right now.
Yeah. No, good. I'm glad you're talking about those things because they need to be talked about. And let me jump in another thing. I don't know who the leader is that you're looking at, and you may feel like they're the best friend in the world, but I don't know what happens. But when leadership starts getting in the mix and autonomy starts getting into the mix, it's amazing how, hey, that's my brother. We went to Bible college together. I'm like, yeah, but I'm telling you better be careful. So the one thing I always say is it's easier to get a divorce before you get married. So, and so what I mean by that is like, get it all out now. And if it's not going to work, then let's figure that out now. Let's not figure that out a year into it. And it is so important, and you're talking about it already, but I cannot emphasize enough, it is so important that you create in clear guidelines and boundaries. Like, this is what it means to be part of our church. This is the guidelines. This is the authority structure. Big one coming up, finance structure. Because that guy, that's a whole different thing.
Don't tell that story. No.
Yeah. That guy gets $1 million check, and he's like, what do you mean it all goes over to this account? We need this, and this. I need more staff. And so clarity on finances, clarity on leadership, clarity on do's and don'ts, Clarity on, okay, this is okay to do, this is not okay to do. I cannot emphasize clarity in writing.
Right, there you go. There you go.
In writing, not as a contract, but as a, hey, let's talk about multi-site as a church, and here's the 10 things that we need to know. That we're going to be clear on these 10 things, 15 things, no doubt about it. This is who we are. This is what we do. Do not do it by just talking. It's not about a contract. It's more about, I just want to be clear. This is who we are, right? We're good. You just kind of hold up the document. So clarity on finances, clarity on leadership, clarity on lines of authority, clarity on do's and don'ts, clarity on culture and style. If your desire is to keep one church, you can't have them be so far off that it's like they're not even the same anymore.
Right.
So you're on the right track, but
Yeah.
include finances, include lines of authority.
Yeah.
All that's got to be included.
So defining those non-negotiables, right? It's
100% on everything.
Yeah.
On everything, not just style, but style, culture, lines of authority, finances, like I said, all of that. How does the offerings get taken care of? Where's their freedoms? Where isn't the freedom? Those are all important. And how you structure finances is really important. I like the approach of programs, three kind of dividing the finances into three parts: property, personnel, and programs. It allows you to say, hey, money comes in. When it comes to personnel, we give certain staff members at certain levels, but you got to get to that level before we hand you a full-time pay to this guy or a part-time pay to that guy. Property, we're not buying any property. That's a board decision. Program, that's where they have freedom. That's where I give them freedom. Like, hey, this is the amount of dollars you get every month to do whatever you want with. Do an outreach, do a big Christmas party, whatever you want, but here's the money you get. You got to have clarity because the more clarity you have, the less you have to move the ball in the middle of the game. The yard markers. You start moving the yard markers once the game starts, people get upset.
Yeah.
So
here's my question. Like, have you written this book yet? Because Pastor Chris, I'm telling you, like, if you write this book, man, I'm buying it. I'm just telling you, man, it's gold, man. So it's so good.
I appreciate it. Well, yeah, it's not written from a point of expertise. It's written from a point of failure.
hey, but that's where the expertise comes from, right? Yeah, through your pain.
That's true. Let me tell you, the 101 things I did wrong.
But that's the reality of it. And that's why we are asking these questions, because, again, so many people I've seen, and we could throw names out of who, started off with multi-site and then brought everybody back, or started this way and then just released them all, or, so I've seen all these models, and I'm like, I don't want to get it wrong. Here's what we want to do. We want to expand the kingdom, right? At the end of the day, we want to expand the kingdom, and we care about those communities, and we feel like there's enough in that community to plant a church there. Right. Excuse me. So what I don't want to do is create tension and pressure and frustration, but each one of these leaders are like, we don't want to go alone, right? We want to be a part. We want to be a part of what's going on here. So I feel like there's a central services type approach to resource them, but so we're constantly struggling through that one, Pastor Chris. And I'll tell you, I may need to fly out there and spend a few days with you, right? So,
well, let me encourage you beyond this time together, man. Reach out to me, because I'm telling you. Just reach out to me, and let me help you walk through a couple of this stuff. I'm totally here to help, because there's easy mistakes that could be made. There are costly mistakes that could be made, costly in morale, costly in finances, costly with just overall team spirit. There's a lot of mistakes that could be made here, and having someone that's like, hey, been there, done that, don't do this, do it this way, fix that, clean that, make clarity here, you could save yourself a lot of heartache, because it can get dangerous fast.
Yeah, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here. I know there's some people who've done it. So
I tell people, don't reinvent on this, man, because it'll cost you a fortune.
I'm not into that, man. I ain't got time for that. No way.
No, I think you're on track. Well, one thing I think important, Tom, is that you're seeing. You're taking cautious steps, and you're seeing that this isn't just some flippant idea. I got to really think this through, because this could really hurt me, could hurt the church, could hurt people. This could cause problems. This could be a debacle. This could not work. And you're thinking about all the right things. You're definitely thinking about all the right things. Getting clarity and founding on what is the right thing is an important part. And like I said, just clarity on everything is important. You mentioned central services. That's also a great thing because you got to be clear, what does central services look like and what does it provide and what doesn't it provide? That's another clarity that needs to happen. Like what can they expect? And you have to make sure that whatever you want to under promise, over deliver. So if let's say that like, hey, we'll handle all websites and graphics at Central Services. I'm just throwing that out.
Yeah.
And let's say your website and graphic guy or gal is kind of flaky, doesn't follow through a lot, late on things. Okay, now you've got this campus over here that's frustrated. And now you've got to deal with a frustration that is not just you and the graphic person. It's you, the graphic person, then them back to you. You've got multiple layers of frustration that happen. And now you're like, and here's what they're going to begin to do. They're going to get frustrated. And then they're going to question this. I'm telling you, they will ask, where's my money going? I mean, let's say their offerings start taking off. And they're like, where's my money going? What? I'll get my own graphic person. I don't need your central thing. I got someone else and do it better for less. And so you got to make sure that whatever you promise on central services happen, because the frustration, if it gets increased, will create a problem.
That's good stuff. So we got to list a few things. You keep thinking of them. I'll keep right. There's more in there. I know there is. Yeah. No, that's so helpful. That is so helpful.
Yeah.
And I know that there's more conversation to have. We're not rushing this at all. This has been, at this point, we're probably at least 12, maybe 12 months into this conversation. So we've spent some time really wrestling through some things and talking, and we just don't want to rush it. We want to make sure that we're following the Lord's leading, and when the doors open, we'll walk through them. But yeah, man, I appreciate it.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. That's what I'm here for, man. Here to help any way I can. What else you want to talk about, man?
Well, it's similar in this one. And so it's this next step. So let's say we plant these sites, right? We've got a site. We've got this going. We've got one or two other sites other than this main campus. And here's the other thing that I'm just nervous about. And, I know so much of leadership is relationship. Here in a staff, we spend time together. There's days that we just spend, I tell them, on Monday, your days, we're all together, right? We're just going to be together on Mondays. That's the way we do it. So when it comes to leading, leaders from a distance, a site pastor who maybe has their own Mondays now, what is your advice for leading leaders from a distance? I'm sure there's still going to be some relationship, but they're not going to be in the building 4 days a week, 5 days. You're not going to see them all the time. Now, what's your best tips on leading leaders from a distance? Because if you get that leadership wrong, like you're saying, there's a lot of pain that follows any disconnection there. So do you have any thoughts on how to do that well?
And you're talking about your leaders that are not, when you say at a distance, are you talking about they're not in the office? Distance being they might be 8 miles away, but they're not in the office.
Correct. Yeah. So they're a site pastor. Like, so for instance, that site pastor who now is, he's got a team of leaders there. Maybe they're doing their own Monday type thing or whatever. They're modeling what we do, but still has to be part of the family, but not always there. Yeah.
Well, as it pertains to multi-site, you mentioned the word site pastor. One thing you got to understand is when you start doing multi-site, a couple things. One, I always say the bigger the church gets, the less people you pastor. And because the bigger the church gets, you're not pastoring 2,000 people, you're actually pastoring 20. And they got to be close to your team. Now, when you go multi-site, here's the key. That congregation, if you do live speaking, I don't know what you're going to do, but if you did live speaking, you're the pastor by figurehead and by title. You're not. He's the one doing the funerals and the weddings and all that other stuff, hospital visits. He's the pastor. He's the guy. So you have got to release any fear in your heart that says, they got to know me. Well, when you go to 3, 4, 5 sites, they're just not going to know you. Not at that level. They'll honor you when you walk in the room, and maybe you speak there a couple times a year, but they're not. You are pastoring the campus pastor. You're the one, the site pastor. You got to stay close to them. You'll never get close. You'll never be close to all the congregations. You got to be close to them. That's one thing. Second thing is he's going to have his own staff, and they might meet on Mondays or Tuesdays or whenever they meet. They might meet. Again, you're close to him. You can't be at all the staff meetings at another campus, but you got to be close to him. Now, I would bring everybody together probably every other month or so to start and see how that feels, where it's like, hey, every other month, first Monday, we call it first Monday, every other month, whatever you want to call it. We all come together. I wouldn't do it like a staff meeting. I would do it more celebratory. They come together. We have a breakfast or a dinner or a dessert night. We talk about all the great things God's done in the last couple months. We give out a few little awards to some people that really have stepped it up. You cast vision because you're the commander-in-chief. You spend some time casting vision. So I would treat, when you bring them together, don't run it like a normal staff meeting. He's handling the day-to-day. You're going to handle any problems he's having through him. When you come together, it's more... They need to hear vision from you, and it needs to be celebratory, and it needs to be exciting, and it needs to be like, man, we're moving forward. God's doing awesome things, and they need to hear from you as the commander-in-chief. It's got to be more about vision when you come together, and less about technique or day-to-day when you guys come together. Your day-to-day is operated through him. So does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. That's great. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
remember,
so good. Because my tendency would be, hey, let's have another meeting, right?
No, don't. Yeah, don't do that. Don't have another meeting.
That would be what I was, all right, let's get around. Let's walk through some things. Let me teach you a couple of things. That'd be my tendency.
Yeah.
So I need people like you to go, no, don't do that. Stop doing that. Stop doing that.
Do the vision moment.
That's
You're
right.
the commander-in-chief.
I love it.
But let the day-to-day stuff, that happens with him. That happens at us every week. When you come together, it's a different meeting.
Yeah.
It's celebratory. It's fun, exciting.
Oh, I love that.
Give out some awards, but have about 15 to 18 minutes of just pure vision. Guys, this is why we do what we do. This is who we are. This is what it means to be a team. They're going to hear from you. You're the vision voice. No question about it.
Now, Chris, let me just affirm you here, because you sound a lot like my wife. Here's what my wife says to me all the time, right? So she'll say, Tom.
Is that good?
Yeah, it is good. No, it's good. She'll say, Tom, you are best when you're like everyone's cheerleader. Right? You don't have to coach everybody all the time. Just encourage them. Just celebrate with them more often, right? And I'm like, I'm trying, but there's always teachable moments. Right? So I'm that guy, right?
I get it.
The guy that you can always do better. That's me, right? That's how I'm wired that way. And so she's like, just encourage and celebrate. And I'm like, I'm trying, right? So thank you for reinforcing my wife's advice into my life, right?
Hey, you just tell your wife I do what I can. I'm a helper.
That's right.
I'm a giver.
That's right. And I'm sure she's going to send you a check in the mail now. So that's.
Yeah, well, she needs to.
That's right. That's awesome. Good stuff.
Anything else you want to chat about? Anything else on your mind today?
If we got a few minutes, just real quickly. Again, it's very similar in this whole world of leaders and leadership and high capacity leaders. For us, I tell our staff all the time, we don't hire doers, we hire leaders, right? We expect you to lead.
Great. Love it.
Right. So that's what we want you to lead. Not that you can't do, we are going to do, right? But we want you to lead. You got to lead. And so when you recruit high capacity level 4, level 5 leaders, here's what I found in my own experience. Like level 5 leaders, it doesn't take long before opportunities abound, opportunities for influence and leadership, and be a part of this committee or sit on this board or speak at these, like high capacity. It doesn't take long before your phone starts ringing, right? So for me, maybe this is for me also, but then also for staff, we're bringing in staff to this way. How do you keep a high capacity leader laser focused on the mission? Because there's a million things to be a part of, right? So there's a mission of the church, and it's what God's called us to in this season, in this area, and for this time. We got to steward this, right? And so how do we stay laser focused when there's just so much opportunity that for high capacity leaders, like, hey, I got this, I can do this, I can do that, I'll do this. And before you know it, you've got 17 things going on, and now you're all over the place. What's your advice for keeping a high capacity leader laser focused on the mission?
That's a really, really, really good question. And there's a couple things that I would find helpful. I get it. The high capacity leader wants to chase the shiny penny. Oh, that's a cool project. Let's do that, and they want to get out of their lanes. So there's a few thoughts that I have in no particular order. One, you got to be clear as the leader what the lanes are. These are the lanes we operate in. We're not going to also do that. I always talk about, I don't think you guys have it in Ohio, but In-N-Out Hamburger is like the hamburger place on the West Coast. You've been to West Coast a million times, I'm sure. In-N-Out's the place, buddy. And if you put down In-N-Out, especially people in Texas that say, "What a burger's better?" Oh my God, that's like you're gonna have a fight on your hands. We whatever reason we think In-N-Out's sort of the all end of hamburgers. Anyway, my point is, if you've ever been there before, which you probably have, you pretty much have a choice. You want a hamburger or you want one with cheese. You don't have like all these options, It's like they stay in their lane. Someone comes along and says, "How about selling tacos?" Just not going to happen. They're never going to do that.
Right.
They're staying in their lane because the leader has decided this is our lane. And I think it's important for you to decide this is our lane as a church. This is the lanes these are all good things, but they're not in our lane. These are all meaningful things. These are all God things, but this is the lane God's called us to. I think number one is if you don't identify the lanes, the people will identify the lane for you. And so you have to identify the lane. Second thing that I would say to that is you have to make sure that you as a leader, because you're a very type A leader, you and your leadership team that are type A and extrovert and high capacity, not only do they have to know their lanes, they also have to know their mission critical. Mission critical, not as an organization. As an organization, for sure, yes, that's more of the lanes, but in your own life. And it's like, and that's a whole different teaching. I won't get into it, but basically here's this. Tom, 70% of your work life needs to be in what is mission critical. Now, how do you identify mission critical? Here's how you identify mission critical. You ready? If Tom doesn't do blank, our future's threatened. What's the blank? Well, if Tom doesn't do weddings, no, our future's not threatened over that. If Tom doesn't oversee the graphics because he's got a really good eye for graphics, no, that's not it. If Tom he's the best guitar player in the church. If he doesn't play guitar, our future's threatened. No, that's not it. If Tom doesn't raise money for our church, our future's threatened. Yes, that's one. If Tom doesn't cast vision and be the chief communicator of vision, then our future's threatened. Yep, that's one. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Right.
And then once you figure out about 3, no more than 4, what I call buckets, okay? You're the chief fundraiser, you're the chief communicator, you're the chief visionary, like buckets where it's like, once you figure out those buckets, 70% of your time has to be spent in those buckets. And not only do you need to be spending 70% of time in the buckets, but your team, you need to look at your high capacity leaders on your team and go, look, this is our overall mission, and these are your buckets. This is our lane as a church. These are your buckets that help us get to that lane. I need you 70% of your time in this lane. And now that doesn't mean, again, you're going to always have to kind of pull them back. But it's interesting, if you don't identify the lanes, who's going to do it? And if you don't identify the buckets, then you're going to have a team that responds to the urgent, not the important. And you got to get 70% of my time is I got to be laser focused on this. So, hey, how often so I would ask you if I was challenging you, and you don't have to answer this, but if I'm challenging a lead pastor, I'm like, how much of your time is spent with high capacity givers and fundraising and how many breakfasts and lunches are you having every week? Not very often. Okay, problem. Okay, so you just start going down the row of then who's going to do that?
Yeah.
That's important. Now, that's not important for your youth pastor. That might be different. Or that might not be important for the site pastor. That might be different. But you have to know your 70% and your 3 or 4 buckets, if you will, and they have to know their 3 or 4 buckets. And if you figure out the lanes and say, this is our lane, we stay in our lane. We're not going to make tacos. We're In-N-Out Hamburger. And then the buckets. Hey, this is my buckets as the lead pastor, Tom Groot. This is your buckets as the site pastor. This is your buckets as the associate pastor. Or let's stay in our mission critical so that we can keep it going this way. Otherwise, again, we respond to the urgent rather than the important. And when you respond to the urgent, then it's just every day is, I don't know what I'm going to do today. Show up and start solving problems and doing whatever and trying to throw a message together. And it's like, no. this is the most important things you do. And remember the statement. This is the statement for all of your team.
All right, here we go.
If Tom or Joe or Susie, whoever, if they don't do blank, our future's threatened. If it doesn't pass that test, then it's not mission critical.
That's good.
Does that help?
Yes, that does help. And you did write that book, right? So yeah, that is so that's awesome, man. That's fantastic.
Awesome.
And you're right. So the things that we apply to ourselves, we just got to continue to hold our team accountable to that, right? Make sure that they're doing the same things that we're doing, right? Yeah. So good.
Absolutely.
So good.
Absolutely. Well, man, cool. Always great talking with you, Tom. And man, if there's anything I can help you with, let's jump on another call. Let's keep talking about the multi-site. You're going at the right pace. I'm totally here to help, man. Whatever I can do to help make you better.
Pastor, I appreciate it for real. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Praying for you, believe in you. Thank you. Thank you for all you do for the Church of America. Yeah.
Appreciate it, buddy. Thanks, man.
Yeah, we'll see you.
All right.